Arlo the Alligator Boy. After having a great start with producing their own animated features, Netflix decided to step up their game and try something a little bigger to make them a fiercer competitor in the animation industry, creating their own family-friendly animated franchise. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of noteworthy animated content found exclusively on Netflix, both for kids and adults, but they usually require the assistance of other already established studios like DreamWorks Animation. With Arlo, however, this is an animated franchise made for Netflix by Netflix, starting with a 2D animated feature and then followed by a series called I Heart Arlo. And you could tell that they want to make a big impression with this one, having the movie be a major musical and a cast filled with recognizable singers, actors, and well-known personalities. So now that Arlo is leaving the swamp life to become a Netflix star, will the Alligator Boy turn out to be as big as New York City? Or will it make the audience go, no more, no more, no more? Let's find out. The story. I might as well start this off with how I was honestly surprised with how this movie has a solid opening. It actually did quite well to set up the musical tone, introduce his audience to Arlo, and setting up the plot for the boy to set off on his journey to New York City. While it is meant to prepare for the tone that will be across the feature, what it did well to begin with a good hook is how it establishes the heart of the picture. How this is all about family and how those that are considered your family significantly makes your life a whole lot better.
You're old enough to know the truth.
I have a dad from a city called New York.
This is your adventure.
But I want more.
But then when Arlo begins his adventure and heads up north to the big city, he not only leaves behind his life in the bayou, but also most of the charm that the film started off with. When the boy gets going, that's when the actual story kicks in, where it becomes the typical road trip movie that is almost identical to the Muppet Movie, featuring an anthropomorphic animal character that plays the banjo from the swamp, heading out on a musical adventure to go to the big city and meet a bunch of funny and unique-looking characters along the way. Yes, it is true that execution can help overcome some of those problems, even making it forgivable that it may seem like a Muppet Movie ripoff as long as the feature is a fun ride. However, even at that, the story's execution doesn't help much because of how the film has this overall feeling of being generic. I'll get into most of these in detail a little later, but the plotline of going to reunite Arlo with his long-lost dad is predictable and goes through the same beats as many other stories with that same trope. The animation feels like it's trying to emulate what was already done on Cartoon Network, most of the characters don't have a lot to offer other than their one trait, and the songs are conceptually some of the most cliched musical numbers that could easily be slapped in any recent family-friendly film.
I stand here now, thinking beyond these walls. There's something beyond these walls.
Granted, this is not to say that this is terrible. It still contains some heart that could help the viewer be invested with the journey, and to see Arlo be with his dad. But it does make it tough to get engaged with it when most of the substance lack originality, and even if it stars an alligator boy, almost offers nothing to make it stand out from all the other family-friendly animated films. Also, it has another problem that is a reminder that Arlo the Alligator Boy is not really a movie, but rather a feature-length pilot to the animated series. Because of its purpose to begin the series, not all the questions get answered in the film, leaving several plot points and characterizations ultimately feeling empty. Maybe this is a spoiler, but I'll just warn you right now that the movie does not get into elements like Arlo's mom, the world building of why these weird creatures exist in this world, and Birdie's backstory of being a lone traveler. Sure, maybe they'll be explained later in the show, but in terms of the movie alone, it makes it feel like it's also forgetful or doesn't care much of its own concepts. Again, it could have been worse, and there is some genuine heart that can be found. But for the most part, it's just hard to get into such a generic story. The animation. Sure, the movie is missing some well-needed originality, but at least the film does try to make the most to have fun with its animation. While it does look simpler than Netflix's last 2D feature with Klaus, it is still a solid-looking film with a surprising flow that presents how a lot of work was put into it. However, like the characters the feature follows, it's not entirely perfect and can come with some quirks. Yes, there is a style to the picture that is more minimal, but does take advantage of it in the designs where the backgrounds have a look that is more reminiscent to the modern graphic design that can be found in the 1950s, mainly using shapes and colors to present the areas around Arlo, like his old home in the swamp or in the heart of Manhattan. This also helps to make the colors a stronger driving force to bring its viewers to the world of the feature and to emphasize the mood of the moment, from the green swamp, to the dark blue ocean, to the luxurious purple Met Gala, to the multicolored flashing lights and buildings of New York.
This is crazy, guys! New York City!
But when it comes to the design of the characters, that's where some of the film's genuineness starts to feel like an illusion. I get what it's trying to do. It wants to go with a look that is simultaneously modern and retro, like an updated version of a classic cartoon. However, with the way that the main cast is an assortment of oddball creatures trying to live a normal life in their own unique way, it makes them look like they're trying to copy what Cartoon Network already did with some of their modern shows like The Amazing World of Gumball and Regular Show. And especially when this is supposed to become a series, it makes it feel like its corporate purpose is to give Netflix their own Cartoon Network-like show. Then again, one advantage Arlo has over those series is some admirably fluid character animation. Granted, it can happen when the movements feel a little clunky, as if there might have been some corners cut by relying more on the computer to do the work. But there are a lot of times when the animators made some great work to have the moment stand out, especially during the musical numbers to feel like their own music video, and the action scenes to get Arlo out of a sticky situation. It's not necessarily perfect animation, and it can make the motives of this franchise feel questionable, but it's hard to deny that this is some really good animation. The characters. As characters for a series, I can see how they can have a lot of potential to be an enjoyable and strong cast. However, as characters for a movie, they really don't have a lot to offer. Like I said before, this is meant to be the big pilot of the series I Heart Arlo, and there are some aspects of these characters that they want to save up for the show instead of revealing everything about them in one shot. As a result, the characters are left a little hollow, given only their one personality trait to guide them along their journey. The only exception that has more depth, however, is Arlo himself, who is kind of like SpongeBob as this bright-eyed and optimistic kid at heart who is naive to the point of being charmingly dumb. It is cute at first when he was at the swamp and learns about the dad he never knew he had in New York City, but quickly afterwards, his nature overstays its welcome, and that's when he truly becomes a SpongeBob ripoff, really pushing hard on that naivete, mostly for the purpose of forcing in some not-so-effective comedy.
Birdie, it's a best friend rock.
That's a seashell. See?
Oh my word, now we can have matching best friend rocks.
As for everyone else in Arlo's gang, there's Birdie, who's the big and super strong girl that is not used to having friends, Felicia, who is the diva, Aaliyah is the cat girl, Marcellus has a hatred for kids, and Teeny Tiny Tony is the New York-style con man. But on their way to New York, they also try to get away from Ruff and Stucky, the typical poacher-like villains that want to kidnap Arlo for their rundown business, accompanied by their werewolf-like beast. In terms of many of their motives, their origins, and their relationship with one another, a lot of them are just glanced over for the sake of helping Arlo reunite with his dad, resulting in the cast to be kind of forgettable on their own due to the way they were written one-dimensionally. However, if there is one thing that the characters do have as an advantage, and possibly the biggest surprise of the film, is that the movie has some great voice acting. I say surprising because, yeah, there are some notable actors that are expected to be enjoyable, like Tony Hale as, well, Tony, but some are more noted to be singers and TV personalities like Mary Lambert, Jonathan Van Ness, and American Idol contestant Michael J. Woodard as the lead.
I come from the swamp. Some people call it the bayou, but that's just a fancy name for swamp. Where do you come from, Birdie?
With all these people together, they each deliver a believable and solid performance to help give their characters more depth and define their personalities, doing what they can in order to make things up for what the writing neglected. Maybe they'll open up more in the show, but in this film, the characters are given great actors trying to make the most out of the little materials that they were given. The songs. Now, I've already talked about how execution can really help strengthen a weak concept, and that this movie may not be the best when it comes to execution. But when discussing about the songs, that is a different story. On the surface, the soundtrack is completely bland. Each song is an R&B type family-friendly tune that can be easy and safe to play on the radio, all with generic motivational messages that are common templates for these musicals, like wanting something more in life, like more, and beyond these walls.
But I want more, 'cause I know that I can have it. I know I'm gonna get it one day. Stand here now, thinking beyond these walls. There's something beyond these walls.
The acceptance of being who you are, like Follow Me Home, Something's Missing, and Beautiful Together.
Follow me home. Everything's gonna be alright. I can see. Find out who I am. Will you see me and remember? Hey yo, I can take it, here I stand. Won't you look, y'all? Need someone to hold us up, to help us on. We make each other better.
And even story arc songs that challenge or question the protagonist's identity, like Better Life and Wash the Hurt Away.
You gotta change yourself. You got to unstrain yourself. A better life.
No crown to wear, no song to sing. No, my skin is thin, so let me in. My armor is down.
These would be the type of songs you'd hear during the end credits of a typical family film. Modern and kind of vague in its message so that it can detach itself from the picture to also sell as their own singles. Not to mention how there is a part of them where they can sound pretty similar and a little tricky to differentiate one another. But when taking the time to actually listen to these songs, for what they are, they're actually pretty good. They got a good beat going for them, the singers do a great job on their part, and the lyrics do well to sell the message of what they want to say. There are even times they do duets where those songs have a good twist to present the dynamics of their respective characters.
Without you, I lose my way. Move with it. One thing I know for sure is that we met. Don't you see me? Here I am. Don't you see me? Don't you see me? I am.
That, and since some of the best animation in the film are during these numbers, they can also work well as their own music videos and help make the movie feel more spectacular whenever they start to sing. Admittedly, it can depend on one's tolerance for this type of music. Since they all have the same tone and style, I'll say right now that if you're not into any of these musical numbers, then this movie will not be for you. Yes, these songs kinda sound the same and they are mostly generic, but to give them credit, they are nice to listen to. As a pilot for a series, it looks like it's off to a good start. But I don't think I can say the same as a movie though. Arlo the Alligator Boy is a complex animated feature where the way it is built feels simultaneously sincere and disingenuous. There is a side of it where a lot of great effort was put into the picture, showcasing some really nice animation, fun songs, and great voice acting. On the other hand though, the writing and the concepts are weak where it also delivers a predictably generic story, mostly hollow characters, and recycling a lot of elements from others where it's hard to find the movie's own identity. feeling like it wants to be the Muppet Movie, it wants to be regular show, and it wants to be SpongeBob SquarePants instead of being its own thing. Since this is meant to be a pilot, I recommend to treat it as exactly that. I'd say watch it if you are interested in checking out the show as well to get the true Arlo experience. As a movie on its own, however, while harmless, I recommend to save some time and watch the musical numbers separately so that you could be settled with just having the best parts of the film. Maybe the show will do a better job to present the big picture with Arlo, but for the movie by itself, there's not a lot to bite into.
Fine, suit yourself.